Welcome back to A Celtic State of Mind. I'm Paul John Dykes. It's Christmas Eve, but we still want to talk about Celtic, and I'm here with John Hughes and Patrick McGilp. And apologies to anyone in advance for this thing over my right shoulder. Hopefully, at some point, I can nip away and furnish it with some merchandise, but it would need to be old school merchandise, John, for obvious reasons. Right, we're going into Christmas Day, John. It's a time for family, it's a time for unity. And we are currently in a dysfunctional family, John Hughes, just to get it started off on a positive note. How are you feeling after our first win under Wilfred Nancy?
Well, I mean, I'm still buzzing from the weekend. I had a great day. Went to the protest, went to where I met a couple of Acsom followers who came up and introduced themselves. And one of the guys even took pictures. So as much as I appreciate it, obviously very low standards of people he's met out and about. So, but it's fantastic stuff like that. It's very, very, people are really kind and come up and, it seems that I am considerably luckier than Peter Lawwell, for instance. Nobody's coming up and giving me dog's abuse. So that was great. And then the game, the atmosphere and everything's a bit weird because I'm not far from the Green Brigade, and they've been there that long. It is weird when they're not there, and it's very quiet. And I don't know what the official attendance was, but I mean, we were 10, 15,000 down, it looked like to me. Anyway, I had seats. I had 4 seats on one side of me, 4 free seats on one side and 1 on the other. And that was just in my immediate row, and there was plenty in front of me and behind me. So, and all around the stadium. So that was not a great start, but completely to be expected. And then, the game itself, which I'm sure we'll get into, which was wild, man. It was absolutely wild. It's like this fella, when you see how high our line is. I mean, at one point, our entire team was in their final third. It looks like what he's done is he's analysed peak Ange ball and decided it was far too tedious and defensive. So he's decided to go his own way. But man, it's mad, absolutely mad. We'll come back to that. But then, the thing I definitely want to come back to, and you get a chance later, is meeting Paul Elliot, who I had a chance to speak to for a while, but kept his light under a bushel, I have to say, while we were talking to him. Just seemed real down to earth. I was expecting nothing more than basic footballer tell story sort of thing.
Yes.
I don't know. I don't think anyone was expecting any more than that. And what we got was a TED talk. It was unbelievable. Talk about eloquent and inspirational and powerful, and in terms of speaker, it was unbelievable.
Just what we needed, John, as well. It was it was just what the doctor ordered in terms of positivity, and I think a lot of people come on here for answers. They think, right, we're in this mess. What are we going to do next? What's the resolution? Paul Elliott provided a lot of that, didn't he? I mean, he was basically breaking it down to the point of a family and a community and all these things that we grew up hearing about, John. And he tapped into all of that, didn't he?
Well, he managed to absolutely humiliate our board without ever mentioning them, just by being a normal human being. And by talking about, he's a vice chairman of Charlton, and he was talking in terms that you would expect someone in a GAA club here to be talking about, being humble when dealing with the fans and having humility. And he must have said humble and humility, I don't know, 50, 60 times. And we just, God help us. When was the last time we saw humble or humility from anyone on our board? It's exactly the opposite. Everything he said, and the thing that he said that was brilliant to make us feel, that how he loved and still loved the way that we see ourselves, our moral values, our core values, our empathy, our kindness, our diversity, all of these things. And it was fantastic to be reminded of what it is to be a Celtic fan by someone who's not a Celtic fan, be reminded why Celtic fans are loved. Not by not a Celtic fan, sorry, by not a Celtic board member, by someone who is, has gone through a fair amount in his life, and we're still really important to him, and we're important to him because of those values. Coming from, born out of adversity in an immigrant community, and born out of charity, and all the things we tell ourselves, but these things have become simply bywords for flogging us more gear, right? That's the only time we hear about what we stand for, is when we've been flogged more gear. So, and by gear I mean merch, by the way. I'm not suggesting what. So, yeah, I know it's Christmas, but so it was just fantastic. I'm still buzzing about it. Met him in the airport afterwards as well. Had a few pints from him afterwards. Had a few good drinks from him before as well. Thanks very much for that, Paul John. By the way, I never settled that tab. And so it was.
I'm not sure I did actually. Sneaked out the side door, John.
Yeah, and it was just fantastic to hear. And for those saying, is he a voice of authority in all things Celtic? No, he wasn't. And he didn't try to be. He didn't really address anything directly about what our current situation is. What he addressed was what he thinks of us, what he thinks a board should be in terms of what he tries to be and his own life and how he approaches people. And I can assure you, he walks the walk, not just talks the talk, because what a guy, what a humble, lovely gentleman he was, top man. And as I said, the point was, without going into detail on our board, he just demolished them, by pointing out that you don't need to be arrogant and contemptuous and divisive and just generally dismissive of the people who you are there to serve. Mm-hmm. Amazingly. And the one thing I would say, we missed Lawwell resigning last week when we were on the pod, Paul John.
He did that deliberately, John, didn't he?
He did. I feel he did. Yeah, I feel he did. But that statement on the way out was just yet another. What a toxic presence he had become, and what a statement to make on the way out the door. And I'm not suggesting that Mr. Lawwell is telling porkies. I have no evidence to suggest that what he said is true or untrue. What I do know is that I was told, I think most of us were, if you're in any way in Celtic circles, we were told in the summer that he was resigning.
Yep.
And he'd be gone at Christmas. And that's exactly the way it transpired. And I think the only reason there was a delay is because he didn't want to make it look like a win for the fans and the collective. And that's the only reason there was a delay. So I don't know. Maybe he was getting abuse. But it is amazingly coincidental that for this entire year, we've been waiting for him to resign at Christmas, because that's what we were told was happening. Let's just put it down to a strange coincidence, because far be it from me to suggest anyone is telling flat out lies in order to attack their fan base. That would be out of order, and I certainly would never do that. But it is very, very coincidental that all that happened just in time for him to resign, exactly when he was supposed to be resigning.
Well, there's two things I want to pick up on there, John. The first one being, and I'll come to Patrick and ask you your thoughts on Peter Lawwell, his legacy and how that's been perhaps tarnished as well. The parting swipe that he took at the Celtic supporters who, may have been giving him a hard time, but also furnished him with many riches over the years as well, Patrick, if you want to consider how much he has been paid for his role at Celtic over the couple of decades. But I'll start off with Paul Elliot here. And I think what John was saying there resonates with me, because what I want to hear from the club is the kind of things that Paul Elliot was saying to us as fans. Now, I don't think there's any more cynical place in the world than the social media platform X. And a few people jumped on this and said, oh, he came, he saw, he took the money and he ran as soon as he could, Paul Elliott, and all this kind of stuff. Even if he did, and I don't think it was as simple as that, because we doubled our money on Elliott. We made a massive profit on him for the times. And there was also an issue with the board. Even if he did, he still understands what this football club means to guys like you and me, Patrick. This is what he put across. And I'll tell you something, if anyone in that boardroom, anyone at the football club had given that kind of address, let's just say, at the AGM, right? Imagine somebody had it in them, had the charisma and the chutzpah and the creative thought process to say, I'm going to blow these guys away by tapping into all the emotional keystones that mean a lot to Celtic supporters, because that's what Paul Elliott did the other night. And John, you've been to many of these things yourself. By the way, when John walked across the stage to go to his seat, he also got a standing ovation. He missed that one out. But virtually everything he said, Patrick.
Standing ovation. I was holding 3 pints as I walked across, and you said Big Yogi, and a couple of people clapped. I wouldn't say it was a standing ovation.
It was rapturous, Patrick. Rapturous.
I think they were impressed by the way I was holding the pints, to be perfectly honest.
Try to put you off. But my point stands about reading a room, Patrick. Reading a room and being able to just tap into the emotional element of that room. Then you have a common ground, then you can communicate. Now, that's basics, isn't it? That's basics. And loads and loads of walks of life where you've got to work with different departments or different companies or clients or whatever, and it's about tapping in. And someone at our club should have done that at the AGM, but they just don't have it in them. The swipe that Peter Lawwell takes at the supporters was backed up by yet another swipe by Michael Nicholson. We've already had one from Ross Desmond, of course. We've been told to behave. There was a transfer window, was it last January? We were told by Peter Lawwell to calm down outside the football ground as well. And it's just like this condescending nature of, you guys are the punters, remember your place, buy your season tickets and zip it. Whereas what we got the other night, and this isn't me trying to promote our live events, it truly was a humbling experience to share some time with this fella. Now, by the way, maybe he's a professional motivational speaker. I don't know. But it definitely worked, Patrick. And I think we need more of that. And by the way, this is just the fundamentals. This is the basics. He was tapping into the basics, Patrick. But he hit the bullseye every single time. How come we don't have that at the football club? Have they lost their way when it comes to what's important to us here?
Well, I think in these positions, you either have the skills or you don't have the skills.
Mm-hmm.
But as well as that, that's sort of uncontrollable for a guy who's been appointed. It's not down to him. Well, it kind of is. But what I'm trying to say is, your attitude towards the fans is something that you choose. It's not something you have or you don't have. It's not like you have Mbappe or you don't have Mbappe sort of thing. You play in the Premier League or you don't play in the Premier League, as Ross Desmond is keen to remind everyone. Your attitude and how you treat people and that humbleness and that respect, that's something that anyone can choose in any walk of life, in any profession or job that they choose. And Paul Elliott obviously chooses to do so as vice chairman of Charlton. Charlton as a club obviously choose to do that, choose to be welcoming and engaging with our supporters. And it's quite clear that certainly in the last 6 months we've chosen to do the opposite of that. Now, regardless of whether you rate Michael Nicholson, whether you think he should be in the job or not, whether you rate, Chris Mackay, Peter Lawwell, Dermot Desmond, Ross Desmond, whether they're capable, whether they're incapable, their attitude, I think, has been flawed, and I don't think anyone can dispute that. And the other point with Elliot would be, I wasn't there. You two were obviously there. A few of my friends were there. I was out having a birthday dinner. Unfortunately, I couldn't make it. But the communication and the way that he communicates in that event, obviously communication is one of the biggest flaws that we've seen this season. Off the pitch, if you take the football stuff away, the way the club's been ran, communication is one of the biggest sticking points I think all of us have had. And it's undoubtedly one of the biggest failures. And I think Paul Elliott, as you say, you maybe weren't expecting that much. You were expecting, it's, you get the stories, sort of behind the scenes stories from a former player. You have a bit of a laugh, but what you got was a TED talk and a sort of motivational speech on, how football clubs should be run, how fans should interact with their football club. And I think he's, as John said, he's given the Celtic board a lesson without ever mentioning them in the sort of 2-3 hour slot, whatever it was. So it's a terrible shame for us as Celtic fans, really, that we're left with these guys. I happen to think that, you know, I've said it since Almaty, a man must fall on his sword. If a Celtic chief executive fails to qualify for the Champions League with the amount of money we have, he should resign. And I think when you look at our failures in the transfer market, how long it takes to negotiate with clubs, the embarrassment of Ian Acho, Sevilla, letting them leave freedom of contract just so that they don't have to engage with us. I think the guy's way out of his depth. You know, it's that old sort of catchphrase, you know, Michael's a really nice guy, but, you know, he's not in a position to do the job. But I mean, Paul Elliot, as I say, I wasn't lucky enough to be there, but certainly my dad and a lot of guys who remember him playing say that he's maybe one of the greatest centre halves they've ever seen at Celtic, which is an amazing statement. I mean, certainly for me, Virgil van Dijk and Carter Vickers are probably the two that I remember most of all. But you know, a tremendous player for Celtic, and I can't speak to, you know, how long he was there or why he left, but he's certainly spoken about fondly in my house. And in terms of Peter Lawwell, I'm not going to. I don't doubt that him and his family probably have suffered threats and abuse. You know, the intensity of Celtic. I'm sure there are a few daft idiots that have. You know, I'm not going to say made his life hell, but certainly made his life worse by shouting abuse at him. But surely he realises the position that he is in and the reputation that he holds. First of all, what I will say is, if his family is suffering abuse, I think he's probably done the right thing in resigning and looking after his family, because it really wouldn't be worth the hassle. I think all three of us would agree that, you know, why put your family through that? And his contribution to Celtic, you know, I started going in 2014. I remember the Legia Warsaw game. I remember the Maribor game. I remember, you know, the Malmo game. I remember the AEK Athens game. I remember the John McGinn transfer saga. I remember Brendan Rodgers leaving. I remember the Cluj game. I don't think my dad's bought anything at Celtic Park apart from a match ticket since the Cluj game. I remember, you know, having the fortune of watching Ferencváros at home after paying full price for a season ticket. And, you know, when he resigned, I think him and Lennon resigned within a few months, and Ange came in, and we thought we're on the up as a club. Then he comes back, and his reputation, I mean, there are people who will defend the board, there are people who will defend him. There are people who know him personally and will still criticise him, because on the football part, when you're talking about the cutting edge and wanting to really take Celtic to the next level, he's failed so many times. I mean, I think I was listening to, I think it was, maybe I was talking to Declan, or I was listening to you guys on here. The bragging about the meeting that you went to on, I think it was the 6th of October, Paul John, about qualifying for a group stage European campaign all but 2 times, and you think, we play in Scotland. We are the best team in Scotland. It's almost impossible to not do that, and you've
Yeah.
still managed it 2 times. So his legacy in terms of European football is without doubt one of failure. He will be remembered as a toxic figure. I've got no idea why he came back. And one other thing I've seen, I mean, certain platforms are sort of linked to certain demographics of people. I actually looked at the comments on the LinkedIn post that Celtic made about Peter Lawwell resigning. Now, these are guys who run their own businesses, are directors, or, you know, managers, you know, well-paid people, professionals who have been in the, you know, whatever industry they choose for 10, 20, 30 years. And they're making public comment. They're willing to put that in their own profile. And almost every comment was criticism. You know, one guy correctly pointed out the year that he was appointed, the chairman's salary went from 40,000 to 120,000.
Yeah.
And you think, is that guy, you know, is he doing that in the best interest of Celtic, taking an 80 grand wage increase? So, you know, you know, regardless of what he's been through personally, I will not be remembering the guy fondly for his time at Celtic, and I can't help that. That is based on my own experiences. And I hope they have a more a chairman better at communicating, a chairman who won't tell his own supporters to behave at AGMs, a chairman who can actually chair a meeting. Hopefully, that would be good,
Yeah.
and won't you know, call it to a halt after 3 minutes. In terms of his legacy, undoubtedly we've had domestic success, but for a lot of those years Rangers were either weakened or not in the league. And in terms of Europe, just, abject failure, in my opinion.
Well,
his legacy is he was here for a long time. That's it.
The thing is, John, I think that when the points that Patrick has just made are made, people jump to the defence of Peter Lawwell, and they jump to the defence because they're saying, well, look at the state we were in financially when he took over the football club, as it wasn't even a CEO initially in 2003. Look at the stormy waters of Scottish football that he has navigated us through after the demise of Rangers. And you think, all right, okay. But going back to what Patrick said, it's basically a free hit at that stage, John. Rangers were on the wind down. I've got an interview with David Lowe going out tomorrow on Christmas Day. That is a Reverend I Am Jolly moment. We're going out on Christmas Day with David Lowe to talk about the Celtic board. How more typical of Acsom could you be? Rather than coming up with something fun and tongue-in-cheek, we're going right into the board talk with David Lowe. And I asked him the question, what is his legacy? Because is it one of toxicity, John? You can focus on both sides of it. You can focus on all these things that he did well. Absolutely right. I get all that. And there'll be loads of stuff behind the scenes where he has been fighting our corner at, other levels and other positions that he has held that has benefited Celtic and all this kind of stuff. But the fact remains is that we've completely underachieved in Europe. We have failed to kick on as a football club. We continually go on about things like the academy failing to produce players, the recruitment system or strategy being non-existent. We speak about communication. I'll come back to that in a second regarding fan media. We talk about the media output being rotten, engagement with the global fan base. We talk about all of these things, the stadium, the footprint of the stadium, all these things that aren't good enough for Celtic. And when you've got all that money in the bank and you should be improving on each of those elements season on season, we have failed to do that. And one of the biggest ways we would have been able to be even stronger is to have a better European record, right? So Peter Lawwell leaves the football club. He knew what he was coming back into. This is the thing Patrick touches on there, John. He knew what he was coming back into. I'm going to throw something here at the Perriers. I think everybody knows that there was a breakdown somewhere along the lines between Brendan Rodgers and Peter Lawwell. Was it the John McGinn saga that Patrick mentioned? I don't know. I don't know when it went sour. We might never know, but we know that the relationship wasn't right, okay? Both of the guys are out the club now, John. Now, if you've ever worked in an organisation when you've got the battle of the egos, it's no good for anybody else in and around that environment. And both of them are now gone. I see it as an opportunity to clean the slate and say, right, let's bring in somebody who is better suited as a chairman at Celtic. David Lowe gives his views tomorrow afternoon on this one. It might surprise a few. And I don't even know at the moment if I've seen the prime candidate from the names that I've seen mentioned, John. But I see this as an opportunity. I don't see it as a, rinse and repeat. Bring somebody else, bring in another yes man, another bankier, bring somebody like that in who doesn't think it's possible to do anything in Europe. I see it as an opportunity to bring in a visionary, someone who will have a shared vision, someone who will be able to link in and communicate with the Celtic fan base. Do we have it in us as a football club, though, John, to do something like that and appoint someone like that?
Well, Michael Nicholson looked like he might actually be a very good CEO until Lawwell came back. And it's that influence because he is, it was Lawwell that appointed him to both his jobs, effectively, or certainly pushed it that way. And then when he left, not only did Michael Nicholson look like he might be decent, but we are still, those two transfer windows are the core of our team now. Mm-hmm. That was, how long ago was that? 5 years ago? Nearly 4 years ago, yeah. And we are still surviving on those players. That's how bad it has been since then. He is, we're well short of that sort of toxic influence in the corridors of power. So that's a great thing. Hopefully they buck up their ideas. I don't know what I think might do for Nicholson, for Michael Nicholson and for Chris Mackay is the numbers. So if our next set of accounts we have sub 100 million or our mid-90s revenue. I think that might do for them because you cannot. There's only so much talking I think Dermot Desmond will accept. And when he looks at those numbers and he sees it's a massive decrease because of the boycott, and then we start. If there's no improvement before then, there might actually be proper boycotts, and we'll see what happens. But Dermot Desmond is a capricious, vindictive man, but he's not a stupid man. So I think at some point he has to look at his investment and go, this is not what I signed up for in terms of this club. It is still an investment. And I think that might be what does for them. I tell you, and it would be so simple for them. See if they wanted to save their jobs. You could save your job, no bother. Stop attacking the fans.
Mm-hmm.
Stop tweeting us like we're scum. Right? Just wind your neck in. Stop being such a petulant child. And stop attacking the fans. Communicate with us as if we're on an equal basis, because we are, amazingly. So, but easy for them, and just lay out the plans. If you don't have plans, write them up, because if you don't want to talk to the fans because you've got no way to justify what you're doing, does that not strike you as a problem? Can you not just, because even you could say, look, we'll put all this stuff that you want to talk about behind us, right? Here's what we're going to do going forward. And that's how they get out of it. They don't need to justify all the, myriad mistakes they've made in the last number of years. They wouldn't even have to do that. You just say, look, we appreciate you're not happy about that. Here's what we're doing moving on. This is a plan. These are our objectives. These are our goals. This is what we're trying to achieve. Right? And even if they didn't really mean it, that would kill most of the objections.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, because it's just the communication and giving us clear idea of what they're trying to do. Because what they've told us so far is all of our worst fears.
Mm.
What they've told us is they don't care. They don't care about us. They don't care about European, progress. No matter what they say, they don't care about it, especially after that Ross Desmond thing, which I heard on Tino's podcast this morning. So apparently it was the fourth draft or something like that. Or maybe it was a huddle breakdown. I can't remember, but apparently it was the fourth draft. That Ross Desmond thing. What was the first three drafts? Was it like something Adolf Hitler would have written?
I want to see draft one, John.
Just
with no red pen on it.
Ross Desmond up there giving it, the board went no. So
how do we know? Wait a minute. How do we know this was draft 4? How do we know this?
I don't know, but I would believe it. And that's gone through the lawyers as well. It's just, it's astonishing if someone's done that. That is just astonishing. It's so bad that it's funny.
Well, here's the thing, John. I'm sorry to interject here, right? But here's the thing: communicating with fans isn't difficult in this day and age, right? Back in the day, you used to have to put it in a weekly magazine. It's not difficult to communicate with fans, right? And in relation to what you just said there about checking and double checking and triple checking and quadruple checking it, and then putting it out. It's incredible how something like that is able to be read out at an AGM, but a simple email to me has to go through the legal team. Isn't that absolutely absurd? Because I received an email today. I mean, this isn't any great shakes. I received an email today because I had heard on the grapevine that Acsom were banned, like everybody else, from Celtic Park, from the press conferences, etc. No one had said anything to us. Obviously, we've got a list of contacts that we've been dealing with for the last 5 years. Everybody in fan media will have the same contacts. It's not like we are in with the club. It's just for rota purposes, right? So I had tried and failed to get a response from all of they guys, completely just ignored us. So obviously I had to start going through other avenues to try and get a response. And I didn't get in touch with the legal heads at Celtic, even though they started following us on LinkedIn, just to keep an eye on our output, I think. But eventually this morning, I did get a response, Patrick. I got a response from Celtic to say the following. With regards to your queries, we are currently reviewing wider communications and fan engagement across various channels. That's good. It's good that they're reviewing it, right? Positive where positive is due, including any fan media arrangements and access. We should be able to update you on this in the new year. All right, so that's fine. I've got an update. I now know that, yes, we are banned or locked out or whatever you want to call it. I hope you have a good Christmas, and I hope you do as well. But that didn't come from a media team or a PR guy or a communications guy or a liaison. You know, so the club, John, are going through a process of being virtually scared or paranoid or something about speaking to fans. Yet at the AGM in front of shareholders, they absolutely tear us to pieces because Dermot told them to. There's an air of, I don't know about Celtic in terms of leadership. Everybody seems scared to do just about anything, John. I'm not trying to tie them up in knots by sending emails here. I just want to know whether or not we're off the rota. That's all. That's what I want to know. I don't think it needs to go down the legal route before you get an email. Surely somebody can just send you an email and say aye or no. But Celtic, there's a paranoia set in here. We're the fans, John. I find it absurd. I really do. It's bizarre.
Well, but that's what it is. You see, it's a paranoia. And, someone saying there in the comments, would you care for anyone that shouted at and abused you? Where do you think the shouts and the abuse are coming from? They're not just random. If you're getting a hard time, there'll be reasons why you're getting a hard time. Now, as Patrick pointed out earlier on, in a fan base of any size, there's always going to be lunatics. So you can't guarantee 100% you're not going to get a hard time. But if the majority of the fans are unhappy with what you're doing, that's for you to look, introspectively and work out what it is that you may be doing that is causing the base of people that support your business to not approve of what you are doing with that business. So it's not like this stuff just comes out of nowhere. And then they perceive any criticism now to be an attack.
This is a problem. Yes.
And it's not. And it's valid criticism and it needs an answer. It's not, we're not asking them to explain, who assassinated JFK. We're asking them direct questions about the direction of this club. They're valid questions and they need to be answered by people who are taking it seriously. And I'm not suggesting they need to answer every question, but we need a plan. We need to know, as I said, every single business that I'm aware of has goals, objectives, and strategies in order to get there. Because, as they say, what is it? A goal without a plan is just a wish, right? So, effectively, that's what we need to see, or we need to know that is happening. And I don't understand why it would be secret. Why would it be secret to say that we want to hit this particular target in Europe? That's our budget. Our transfer budget is going to be, don't even need to tell us what it is. It has been agreed, and the manager is happy with the amount and the quality of players and all the rest of it. So, it's dead simple. And again, we're now at the position where, people talking about Tisdale, and we spoke about him last week and how he's, the football doctor who must be, the way he kills transfer deals, he must be Harold Shipman in the football world. So it's absolutely, ridiculous. We still don't even know. Apparently, one of the things that he was putting up slides on some presentation he was doing last week, and he put up director of football. So we haven't even seen that yet. And we don't know what it is he's doing. But what we do know is he's not qualified to do it. No matter what you think, you might think he has potential, or maybe he must be. I'm assuming this guy could talk the hind legs off a donkey in a very, very persuasive way, because to get the job at Celtic with that CV, wow. I mean, that's amazing.
It's an anomaly at best, John.
Yes, at best. But the club are paranoid because they just don't want to tell us what they're doing. And they don't want to make it clear what our goals are. And as long as they are trying to run this board as if they're some sort of Politburo, and any sort of dissension will be met with, effectively punishment of some description, like the banning of the Green Brigade and so on. They are going to have nothing but resentment from the fans. None of this is ever going to be healed. And it is not on the fans to fix it. We are not the ones running the business. It's on you to fix it. Not you, Paul John, sorry. It's on you as the board to fix it. You might make more of an effort, to be fair, but it's on the board to fix it. So there's no point in attacking the fans. It's you that needs to wind your necks in. It's you that needs to stop being petulant. It's you that needs to accept the fact the fans aren't happy for very good reason, and you're not addressing. I mean, those 7 things that we asked them to address way back when this all started, none of that's been addressed. None of it. So we are no further forward in them changing their strategy. So, it's just, you would like to think that in the new year, while he's standing under the mistletoe or having a wee snifter going into the new year or whatever it is, or he's on holiday, like apparently Mr. Tisdale is in the mouth of the transfer window.
We'll come back to that, aye.
Oh, yeah, I'm telling you. That's, I don't know who does the rota for the holidays at Celtic. That's unbelievable. That's like giving guys a few weeks off during the season. You know what I mean? It's just like, anyway, we'll come back, as you say. But, this is all of their making. All of it is of their making. And they are seemingly completely unwilling to address any part of it.
The first thing I'm going to pick up on, John, it's on them. Yeah, it is. I'm going to bring this up, and I'm not doing this to have a go at the commenter. I'm bringing it up because I hear and see this all the time, particularly on social media. Right, I'm going to give you an example of what I think is negative. Right, negative is going into a situation where there is nothing to criticise and finding something to criticise. Negative is that person who goes in for a meal in a beautiful restaurant and is looking to complain about the food, looking to send something back, rather than just sitting and enjoying the company. What we're doing just now is not negative. What Patrick listed were just simple facts of the matter. And you can have 2 different situations true at the same time. You can have everything that Patrick listed that Peter Lawwell and the club during Peter Lawwell's tenure failed to do. And you can also say, but look at all the domestic success, look at the financial stability, etc., etc., etc. It's not negative. So when yourself comes in, Big Joe Bob, and it could be any number of people, so I'm not singling you out, still too negative. This isn't negative. Celtic are on their 3rd manager, the 3rd managerial team of the season. We're only in December. Celtic are on their 2nd chairman, and we're only in December. Celtic have lost 2 cup finals in the last 6 months. This isn't negative. We are basically saying that there are issues at the football club. And I'll tell you what we always do on here. We always look for resolutions. We throw out suggestions, opinions. They should have done this. They could do that. We write emails to various people within the executive at Celtic Football Club offering solutions. We attend meetings and offer solutions. That's not negative. That's absolutely not negative. This is looking at Celtic and saying something's wrong. Maybe it's the culture at the football club. I've come up with a theory that we're just rubbish at dealing with adversity these days because we're so used to coasting and winning and success and everything going our way. And the minute something doesn't go our way, the football club implodes. Everybody starts making bad decisions. We kick out at each other. We kick out at managers. We kick out at fans, journalists. We ban everybody from the park. That should not be Celtic. We were much better at this previously. Patrick, I grew up watching a really unsuccessful Celtic team who virtually every season were in adversity. And we went to games and sang always looking the bright side of life. We should know how to deal with adversity. But as a football club, it's almost as if we're immune to it. We don't know how to deal with it when things aren't going our way. It's almost like, when the football manager, the old cliche, I learn more about my players in adversity. The twice in the last few years that Celtic have hit a bit of a problem, we've learned a lot about how we deal with things as a football club, and it's not that great, Patrick.
Yeah, it's disaster stations every time. You think you're doing all right, and then you just fall off a cliff edge. And obviously that's what's happened this year. You sort of have the high of Bayern Munich, and ever since then it's been a sort of slow descent into where we are now. it is utterly baffling. I mean, you look back at the COVID season. For the record, I actually think this is probably worse than the COVID season. I know that by this stage in the COVID season, I think we're about 16 points behind. But
Who's going to be our ball and goalie though, Patrick? Who's going to play that part?
on a flight for God knows what. Oh God. You know, I mean, it is just a disaster. And it's one of those seasons where every time you think you're turning a corner, something else happens. You know, and I know at Celtic you're only ever 2 losses away from disaster, but it's the season that just it's hard to find a turning point. And seasons gone by, you found a turning point, you sort of kick on and stuff. This season we've not really found that turning point yet. Hopefully it was Tierney and Forrest's goal at the weekend, but in seasons where you don't find a turning point, you sort of rarely win the league. On a wider point, I mean, just the results at the weekend, I was always under the impression that Hearts would fall away and Rangers would be your sort of main title contenders, just because I didn't think Hearts had the squad. But when you actually look at the squads, I don't think any of us have got the squad to really sort of motor away and win the league by, say, double digits. I think, unfortunately, we have in a slog here, unless, of course, Mr. Tisdale has all his ducks in a row and can afford to take 2 weeks annual leave before one of the busiest months of his
Or is he
of his
using
calendar.
his annual leave prior to leaving the building, that was a rumor swirling about last night as well. I don't know if I started that rumor actually by mentioning it on Acsom, but again, Patrick, this is the big concern, and I do want to focus on that going into January. A lot of people say it's all right, we can sort it in January. Can we though? Because I don't think Mr. Tisdale has shown us that he can.
Well, when you look at our previous form, we're notoriously really organised in January. We've always had great windows. We've always had our ducks in a row. I mean, the last window we were really organised was the window before Ange left. It was the window just before Peter Lawwell was appointed chairman, funnily enough, where I think we got Owen to replace Yakimakis and we get Johnston in to replace Juranovic, both of which before the players even left. We knew they were leaving. We got the players in. Listen, no one ever worked out at Celtic, but he's having a good time elsewhere. And in my opinion, Alistair Johnston was an upgrade in Juranovic even to this day. So we had our ducks in a row then. I think the following January we get Kuhn in, which turned out to be a good signing, and me and John always backed him. I think if you rewatch podcasts from February 2024, me and John were always big fans of Nicholas Kuhn. And Adamida, who they had their moments, and Kuhn undoubtedly had an exceptional 6 months. But then last January was a disaster. The summer was a disaster. Ever since Tisdale's walked into the building, it's been a bit of a disaster. And fair enough, I think he's only been here a year or just over a year, but it needs to be so much better. And what you're saying about his CV as well, he revolutionised scouting at Exeter, 20 years ago, and you think, is that enough to get you an executive level job at Celtic in the recruitment department? That is a worry. That is a big worry. So I have no faith. I hope and I want us to be in a much better position come 3rd of February, whatever it is. But all the evidence points to the opposite. And it's just going to be it's going to be another nail in their coffin, even though ultimately it's down to Dermot Desmond and the guys on the board whether they resign or not. Protests can help, but I think ultimately we are relatively powerless, unfortunately. But it's just another sign of how disorganised and unorganised they are, how out of their depth that they are. That we have never needed more a strong January transfer window, because I think that our main weakness this season, despite all the sort of the protests and the lack of preparedness and the unorganisation, I think our biggest flaw is our poor squad. It's a really weak squad compared to. I mean, I think Brian Dempsey said it, or I want to even say Willie Hawley said it as well on the McAvenny's podcast. It's the poorest squad a lot of people can remember in decades, and things like that are subject to hyperbole, obviously. But I think it's the only reason we've been dragged into a title race. I think our squad is still marginally better than Rangers and Hearts, but I think it's the reason we've been dragged down. So we really need a good transfer window. I mean, the game at the weekend, a good striker papers over a lot of cracks. If we had a good striker playing at the weekend, we could have won that game about 8-1, not instead of 3-1. I mean, the amount of chances that we create, hit the post 3 times, guys missing open nets or sort of not gambling and not taking a chance. It is incredible the amount of chances we created at the weekend, and it's why I'm fully behind the manager, Nancy. As much as we're still a bit suspect defensively, the amount of chances we create under his system, certainly in the league anyway. Roma in the cup final or something else, but the 3 league games that he's played, we've had enough chances to win all 3 games, and we've said it since January. I said, naively, I said, we can get away with just having Ida, January to May, and then we'll, sign a striker in the summer. We didn't sign a striker. We sold Ida, and then we get a free agent in the 2nd of September in Iheanacho. We need a proper number 9. We've been missing it the whole year, and the whole year we've been getting worse and worse. But now, despite the poor squad, despite the protests and the unorganisation and the disaster at boardroom level, we've got a guy who, at the very least, with this squad, can create a plethora of chances. And if we can sign a forward or 2, I still think we can win the league, which is the bare minimum, by the way. Just like beating Kairat Almaty was the bare minimum. But it's where we are just now. But as I say at the beginning of this sort of small rant, I have absolutely no faith in anyone at the club, apart from Mr. Nancy, to do their job properly and get players in January, because, as I said with Lawwell, all you need to do is look at their record, and their record is desperately poor.
I'm going to ask the pair of you. I don't think anyone's going to disagree with a number 9, maybe even a couple of strikers. Have a think about your Christmas shopping list for Wilfred Nancy. We're talking there about turning points. There comes a moment, I think, in a season where it's a turning point or a tipping point. Something just tips the whole thing over the edge. Or, indeed, that win can be the turning point that you're talking about. And I'm going to be positive and say, I hope it is. I'm going to bring up Jai67 saying, they had a great opportunity with the lie about the fan with the bladed weapon. Were you at the game, by the way, Patrick, up at Tannadice, the 2-1 game? You weren't there. Patrick, I know that you attend a lot of away games, the commitment and everything that that takes, both with your time and with the finances and all the rest of it. And then all of a sudden, the press and the police are targeting this guy for pointing his finger. And I mentioned this yesterday, and I agree with Jai. I think it was a great opportunity for the club, without even saying, let's start building bridges, guys. Just for the club to come out and stand up for the fans, which they should do anyway, because it's the right thing to do. But it would also start to build those bridges. I think the AGM was a brilliant opportunity to start building bridges. It went the other way. It went the complete other, in the other direction. But we could have had great speakers. We could have had, video footage that would have touched the emotional element of the Celtic fans in the room. But we didn't. We just went on the attack. I think that the appointment of a new manager was also an opportunity to build bridges. I think that what you could have done is all the fan media channels who I've just found out were banned. By the way, didn't you notice there, John? Yes, you are. Can I confirm? Yes, you are banned, and have a Merry Christmas. And that was the way that email read there when I was looking at it again. So I think there's been a few opportunities. Stand up for your fan at Tannadice. Absolutely. Make it public and drag the media over the hot coals for accusing them of being a knife-wielding maniac.
I think, Paul John, though, if there had been a statement from the board, this particular board, I think what we'd have seen is a concern over the sharpened fingernails of this particular fan, who was clearly threatening them, sort of Wolverine style. So of course they could have done. But I mean, they have done nothing except attack the fans. That's all they've done in every single communication that they've had. No, wait, hang on. Did they? I can't remember. Did he specifically attack the fans while he was attacking the former manager? I can't remember if he took the time to do that there, or where he was just. No, I don't think he did. So I'm not completely right. But in everything else, unless they are attacking their own fan base, they haven't said a word. So and as you say, building bridges. if they want to take the edge off of this, like grown-ups, and as I've said that before, it is their job. You know, and I told the story before. My first job, you know, I had strips torn off me for not de-escalating a situation, despite the fact I was entirely within my rights. So it doesn't matter, and this is the thing. And yet, are any of these guys married? Because it doesn't matter if you're right or wrong. You know what I mean? You've got to suck it up if you want to sort the situation out.
Real one, absolutely, John. Yeah.
You know, but really, who's at fault at this point is irrelevant. It's your job to fix it. You know, and the only way you don't want to fix it is if you're quite keen to get a divorce. And these guys seem to want to divorce either themselves or the club from the fans.
Well, see that, John, right? I mean, I'm going to go back to the COVID season. Patrick, you mentioned that was the last time that we couldn't deal with adversity. We just imploded. We absolutely imploded. There was a Dubai fiasco, and then there was that. There was a press conference just post Dubai, and I'm going to say this, and I said it at the time. I felt really, really sorry for Neil Lennon. He was coming out day after day after day. He didn't look as though he was in the best of fitness himself. And he was getting fired questions about every manner of things with regards to the travel and the buses and COVID cases and should we have gone. And we just kept chucking Neil Lennon out there to speak to the press, right? And I think the pressure actually really did show on Lennon. But even he started kicking out. He kicked out at fans. Now, I don't mean he physically attacked fans. He kicked out at me, called me toxic, said that I had created a new breed of Celtic fan that he did not recognise. Now, and I'm thinking to myself, that's absolute garbage. Because if you come to Celtic as a player, as a manager, as a board member, and you don't reach the standards that have been set by Celtic, by the way, not by anybody else, then you will be criticised. Now, it never ever has got personal. It's never got personal when it comes to anything Acsom related. And there's a comment in here that I'll try and find with regards to dehumanising. Here it is. I'll bring it up. James Devlin, Merry Christmas. Seen a video of Liam dehumanising language. Please tell me that doesn't represent Acsom. What I would say, James, is I wouldn't dehumanise anyone. If they're not doing their job, I think, as a Celtic supporter, you can say that. It's always been that way with football, right? On the supporters' buses, in the boozers, at school, whatever, you always had your opinion. In terms of dehumanising, absolutely not. No, I mean, everybody that comes onto Acsom has their own opinion on Celtic. So I would look at this and say that the club has to be a little bit more humble. There needs to be a bit of humility, and they've got to realise, right, even if it should be that it's the right thing to do and that's the reason you're doing it, they need to realise that just round the corner, guys, season ticket renewal, what is it, March, right? March, April, they need to think to themselves, you know, if this disconnect continues, if this divorce is underway, John, you need to sort it before then as a football club, because when they figures come out, like you said at the top of the show, John, when they figures come out and they're diminished massively, that's when it doesn't matter how good a guy you are or how much a Celtic fan you are. If you're not doing your job and the bank figure has gone from 77 to say 43, then that's a horrific performance financially. So if you're going to take all the plaudits for the brilliant performance financially, you're going to have to take that on the chin as well. And somebody has to be held accountable for it. Right, we're talking shopping list, and I know you guys, unlike Lawrence Conley, you guys will have done all your shopping. Everything will be wrapped. It's all under the tree. No panic. You can now chill out after this broadcast. I'm going to give you your shopping list, Patrick, for Wilfred Nancy in January. You've already mentioned a number 9. What else do we need?
God. I think we might need a centre half. You know, looking at the wing backs, I think Tierney's sort of come onto a game. He scored a few goals for us. I think he lasted 90 minutes against Aberdeen. I think he's lasting a bit longer. He looks a lot more solid. I really like Toby Donovan. He obviously put the cross in for Tierney's goal, and I think he's a great cross of the ball. I think he's a better option than Anthony Ralston anyway. You've obviously got Johnston coming back at some point. I don't know if we you could always do with an extra midfielder, and obviously folk are wanting to leave. Maeda, I think we all agreed in the summer that Maeda was away in January, but so much has happened since then. You just don't know what's going to happen. So you might need, if he's going to play the 3-4-3, call it, I don't know, an inside forward or a sort of left winger, left midfielder, whatever it is. You obviously need a replacement for Maeda. Under Rodgers, our wingers were so integral, and yet all of them were so poor. The fact that Yang is rapidly approaching 100 Celtic appearances is, I don't want to slate the guy too much, but I think that's a disgrace. Our squad management has been a disgrace. If a guy who had one foot out the door, and I personally don't rate the guy. I think he's like Mikey Johnson Mark II. He's got all the skills in the world, but his decision making is so poor, loses the ball so easily. He's fast, he's quick, whatever, but just not Celtic class in my opinion. So I think we basically need a full forward line and a centre half, I think. And depending how Casper plays the next 6 months, we might need a goalkeeper in the summer.
I was going to ask you that. In terms of the centre half, are we talking right-sided centre half? Would that be a priority?
Certainly right-footed. I mean, you seen the back line a few games ago. I can't remember the game. All three of them were left-footed. Now, I remember when Celtic were crying out for a left-footed left centre-half. We've now got three centre-halves who are left-footed, who don't have a right-footed one. Obviously, Carter Vickers will come back in. You hope that his injury woes are behind him. But then, a guy like that, if he's back to top form, you don't know how long he's going to stay at Celtic. If he has... Say he comes back in the summer and he has a wonder season next season, and fair enough, that's 18 months away here. But if he's back to top form, he might leave. If he's not back to top form and he's injured all the time, well, we need another centre half anyway.
Well,
so I think we need another.
With Carter Vickers, so Carter Vickers was on the decline this season anyway. He's now injured, and I don't see him getting back in the team. So where would you play him? Because if he's not quick by any stretch of the imagination, so he doesn't have Trusty's recovery speed. He was never the one distributing the ball. He would always pass it to Liam Scales and let Scales pass it out. So what does he do in this system? Where does he play? I don't think he fits. I actually think if he wasn't injured, we'd be selling him this window to try and generate some funds. Because the other problem we have is we have a massive wage bill, and now we have a load of dead wood that, because we're not in the Champions League, looks less and less attractive, and try to get it moved on for any sort of money. We have guys like, Shin Yamada's on about 12 grand a week. This sort of stuff. We've got a load of guys there that we need to get off the books, but we're not going to be able to do that kind of surgery, I don't think, until the summer. So what I expect is, if anything's happening, I don't expect any major purchases. I expect a load of guys going out on loan and some guys coming in on loan to try and even up the books. I'm not expecting any big signings here, but I would be surprised if Carter Vickers gets back into this team. I just don't see where he fits. Also, Yang, I have to say, Patrick, the last couple of games I've seen, Yang has been really good. Now, the one, as you say, the lack of quality, the problem is where he fits it. What people have always said is he tries hard. He's great endeavour, right? But that endeavour works better in this system because he's busting himself getting up and down. And that's exactly what you need from someone in that position. However, I was doing my nut in at the game where, he made a break and he ran in on goal. And it was basically him, three defenders trying to get back to cover him. But he was in on the keeper and he just stopped at the edge of the box and waited for support. At that stage, as a winger, you've got to go in for the kill there. You can't be standing waiting. So, I appreciate what you're saying, but I think he looks a lot better now than he looked under Rodgers. To be fair, he looked better under Martin O'Neill than he looked under Rodgers. But you're right. I mean, for a guy who was essentially out the door. But we have, again, with CCV, AJ and Jota, those are three of our biggest earners by a distance, and we're getting nothing out of them. So I don't think you're going to see loads of money thrown about here. And what really worries me is the fact that everyone's saying, obviously we need a striker. Well, yes, but we needed a striker before, right? I mean, you know, and it just, you know, why this time when it's obvious and we need a striker are we going to get one? Although, I mean, I was the one negative I had at the game, really, because even when we went down, I thought we were creating so well. When they come back level, I thought we created so many chances that I was confident we would still score. But, I mean, I was like, shit, the negative comment I made was, if it was John Joe Kenny up front, would we know any different? Do you know what I mean? It was... and people commenting about Ian Atchell coming back, and Ian Atchell does look like he would be great for this, but I'm not sure he's ever coming back in terms of for more than a couple of games. He doesn't seem to be able to keep fit, and I think that's been a major problem for him over the last number of years, which is why his team were happy to let him go. So,
John Joe Kenny.
Yeah.
But I mean, why did you do that to us? There's a form of PTSD that exists with some names, and I'm looking at John Joe Kenny. Actually, he's in the same squad as Greg Taylor. John Joe got the number 3 jersey. Greg Taylor's number 32. I know which left back I would certainly go for, and also within that squad is a certain Giakoumakis, isn't it? Giakoumakis plays for that same team, PAOK. There he is. He's on loan from Cruz Azul, Georgios Giakoumakis. No, you're right, John. Now, I don't know how many of you watched Nancy's interview yesterday. What happened to me yesterday was, on the way back from Glasgow, I thought, I'll have a quiet visit to the fort. I don't know Glasgow that well because I'm a country bumpkin. I thought, I'll just go there. It's fine. And it was pandemonium. And because I'm a country bumpkin, I didn't mentally note where I'd parked my vehicle, right? So I'm too busy listening to Wilfred Nancy on the radio, right? And I'm thinking to myself, right, blah blah blah, better go and get my stuff. And when I come out, I have no idea, John, where I've parked the car. No idea, none. I know that it's generally in this area over here somewhere. And you know what I did? I tried to just do this in a cool way. I'm walking up and down lanes and aisles, clicking my keys on, off, open, lock, until I seen the bloody lights. It took me about 30 minutes. So if anybody saw me there, yes, I was completely lost. So thanks for all your help, which was zero. Right? But I was listening to Nancy, and I did get the set. I was a bit worried. We get to this point, guys, where we'll look at every single word that's said by the manager, try to second guess, what are we going to do in January? I don't know if you've seen it, Patrick. I'm not full of faith that we are going to go out there and spend big money and bring in the players that we need. So what John's saying there, some might think is cynical. Actually, I think it's kind of backed up by what Nancy was saying yesterday.
I would agree. I never watched the full press conference, but the quote you're talking about, I believe I seen online. Just about, working with the players that he's got and stuff like that, all this sort of typical stuff when you're asked a question about money to spend. It would be an act of self-sabotage, really, if we don't sign a striker. I find no reason. Well, obviously the reason would be that they're incompetent. We certainly have the money for it. And, no messing about on deadline day like we did with Ian Atchell and we have done in previous windows. We desperately need a striker. It is so obvious that we need a striker. It's painfully obvious. And, if we're not going to back the guy in the January window, if I was him, I would resign. Because, what is in it for him if he's not backed here? He's inherited a squad. He's chosen to play 3-4-3. Fair enough, he's got his critics for that, but he is creating a lot of chances, at least domestically. I'm behind him. I want to see what he's trying to do. But if he's been promised money and he's not then given any to spend, or there's sort of incompetence at an executive level, I don't really see what's in it for him. To stick around here and sort of play that game like Rodgers tried to do. Rodgers got away with it because he's a Premier League quality manager. But to be messed about by our board again, I don't think Nancy should accept that. But I think I'm hoping that before he put in his annual leave, that Tisdale scouted a bunch of top quality strikers. Make myself laugh saying that. No, it's so obvious that we need a good window. But yeah, as myself and John have said, I've got no faith. I've got absolutely no faith, and certainly from Nancy's comments, it doesn't sound as if we're going to, blow the 77 million like a mental pools winner. on a bunch of new players. We are stuck with a wage bill far in excess of a team that is, a poor Europa League team at the minute, or second place in the SPFL. So it'll be really interesting to see what Tisdale and the board and the manager try to do with the squad, because we probably do need to get rid of a lot of deadwood. I mean, Yamada, I know we're 5 minutes beyond here, but Yamada, 3 managers have looked at him and deemed him not good enough.
Yeah.
I mean, he's put him on as an act of desperation a few times, but I think Rodgers, was initially criticised by saying, he's been offered players and he won't play them, or he's turned them down, and that was the Sun article back during the transfer window, and you think to yourself, well, what is that guy saying now? We've offered him players at Yamada's level. He's turned them away. 3 managers have now had a look at Yamada and deemed them not good enough. So, that guy looks a bit foolish. Whoever it was offering Rodgers players, obviously wasn't giving them players good enough. And, the big, you were saying about JFK earlier, if you asked them who killed JFK, they'd probably say Brendan Rodgers or the Green Brigade. It's obvious, it's one of the two. But I'm going round in circles here. But the blaming of Brendan Rodgers for the bad transfer window is obviously nonsense, and the spotlight is really on them in this window. I'm right behind Nancy. I like what he's trying to do. We're defensively a bit shaky, but I'm willing to back the manager, and I just hope that the club are equally willing to back the manager.
You talk about spotlight as well. I shall take your lost car, Paul John, and raise you the 15 minutes I spent looking for my phone using the torch on my phone.
John, come on. Remember you used to have the wee thing you could actually click it and there was a sound and you at least you were following a sound. Listen though, I think you make a brilliant point there, Patrick. That's probably gone over my head here. Yamada has not been fancied by 3 managers, 3 regimes, not just 3 managers, 3 different management teams have looked at him and thought, nah, he's not up to scratch to get a start. The only reason he's getting fleeting appearances because we are on the bones of our backside. Inamura is in that camp. Simpson Pusey is in that camp. And Balakwisha is also in that camp. So what does that say for our summer transfers? Now, I know Balakwisha's away, obviously playing for his country or not, sitting on the bench for his country. But there's 4 players from the summer window. So if you came on here for positivity on the January transfer windows, ladies and gentlemen, hopefully you got some from there. Tomorrow,
can I just say, I hate to interrupt, but Balakwisha for me needs to go in this window. We need to try and get some money back for him and get a striker in. He's not going to do it. And Yamada, I agree with Patrick. Unfortunately, I really wanted Yamada to be good, but in the bits that we have seen of him, when the ball comes to him, he doesn't look as if he knows what he's doing at all. But Balakwisha is one of the few players we have that still has some residual value because we've only had him for 5 minutes. I would get him out for 5 million and get a decent striker in. You could possibly say the same about Tenecte, but give the boy a break. But yes, and we are well over. Just before you wrap up, mate, can I just say a Merry Christmas to everyone? And I really appreciated all the people that came up and spoke to me at the game and at the event afterwards. It's a fantastic community you've built, and it's a privilege to be a part of it.
That's appreciated, John. Again, echo all of that. There is a community here at Acsom. People think that this is, to maybe quote Kevin Graham, birthday cared urine. It's not. I mean it. There's a community of people who, even at the latest gig, are coming up and giving you Christmas cards for your family or handing you envelopes with donations for wee Jamie Tierney. There is an incredible community of Celtic fans within this Acsom platform. And I'll tell you something, we can disagree, and we'll continue to disagree, but we all want what's best for Celtic. So see tomorrow at 12:30, if you care. There is a show going out tomorrow at 12:30 because we like to just keep everything ticking along. But just make sure that you're with your loved ones and you keep everybody close and be kind. It's not about spending loads of money, just be with people. And that's what Christmas is all about, and be grateful that you're around them. So thank you, every single one of you, for everything you've done all year. And we'll see you on Boxing Day. For anybody who wants to join us, I'll be here on a Celtic State of Mind.
Hail, hail.